The red and blue lights strobed across the quiet street, casting eerie flashes on my front yard as two police officers approached. Their hands hovered near their belts, tense but controlled. Behind them, Karen Mitchell, the self-proclaimed ruler of our HOA, pointed in my direction like she was starring in her own made-for-TV legal thriller. "That's him, officers," she announced, her voice tinged with that unique blend of false righteousness and smug satisfaction. "He's been trespassing on HOA property and threatening the workers. I want him arrested immediately." It would have been laughable if it weren't so maddening. The so-called HOA property she was referring to? That was my land. The freshly laid driveway, still being paved by a confused crew, ran straight through a portion of my privately owned lot. Not public land. Not shared space. Mine. 3 weeks earlier, I'd come back from a business trip and immediately noticed something was wrong. Heavy equipment was parked near the tree line, and deep tire marks gouged through the undergrowth I had spent years preserving. The wooded buffer I'd maintained between my house and the HOA grounds was being torn apart. I approached the foreman, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me," I said, trying not to let the fury in my gut take over. "What's happening here?" He barely looked up from his clipboard. "New shared driveway. HOA approved it last month." "On my land?" I asked, stunned. He shrugged. "I just follow the orders. If there's a problem, take it up with the HOA." So I did. That same afternoon, I stormed into the HOA office. Karen sat behind her desk like a queen on a throne. The nameplate on her desk read President Mitchell, flanked by 3 gavels like she was preparing for a courtroom drama. "Mr. Davidson," she said before I even opened my mouth, "if you're here about the construction noise, it's within the permitted hours." "I'm here about the construction on my property," I said firmly. She waved a hand dismissively. "You're mistaken. That driveway's being built on HOA common land to help residents on Maple Court." "I've owned that lot for 15 years, I replied. "I have the deed, the survey. The crew is literally destroying my trees." Her smile was condescending enough to make my skin crawl. "I think you're confused about your property lines, Mr. Davidson. Maybe review your documents more carefully." The conversation ended there. She clearly had no intention of listening. Over the next 2 days, I dug through everything I had: original land surveys, county plat maps, satellite images, all of it. Every piece confirmed what I already knew. The HOA was building 20 feet into my land. I brought the evidence back to the foreman. This time, he seemed genuinely uncertain. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I don't want trouble, but I've got orders. If you've got proof, take it to the HOA." So I did again. At an emergency board meeting, I laid out the documents. Karen sat above the rest, gavel in hand like she was running a trial. "These papers show your project is on my land," I said, spreading them out on the table. She didn't even glance at them. "The board approved the project unanimously," she said. "Your interpretation of the lines is incorrect." "This isn't an interpretation," I snapped. "It's a certified legal survey." She gave a smug little shrug. "Our HOA plans override conflicting claims. This driveway benefits the community. Surely you don't want to stand in the way of progress." The other board members nodded along, silent puppets under her thumb. I realized then that logic and facts were pointless here. That night, I put up construction fencing along my actual property line. Bright orange mesh, clear no trespassing signs, bold letters, private property, construction halted pending legal review. The next morning, I woke up to heavy machinery roaring outside. I ran out and saw the fencing torn down, the asphalt crew already working. Karen stood off to the side with a victorious look that made my blood boil. "You can't do this," I said, seething. "This is illegal. You're on private property." Karen turned to the workers with a dramatic gasp. "Did you hear that? He's threatening you." "I'm not threatening anyone," I said. "I'm telling you to stop trespassing." "Property?" she sneered. "This is HOA land. If you don't back off, I'll call the police." "Go ahead," I replied, taking out my phone. "In fact, I'll call them myself." but she beat me to it, dialing with the flair of someone rehearsing for a stage performance. Yes, hello? We have an aggressive man threatening workers and falsely claiming HOA property. Yes, please send officers. Which brings us to now. The officers arrived to find me calm, standing at the edge of my own driveway, while Karen played the role of panicked victim. I could see their uncertainty. Officers, I said, trying to remain steady. I have documents showing this is my land. The HOA is paving through it without permission. The older one, Martinez, nodded. Do you have those documents on you? I handed over the folder. They examined the pages carefully, comparing them to what they saw around them. Their expressions changed. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said, turning to Karen. These documents show this man owns the land in question. Do you have any paperwork proving HOA ownership? Karen's confidence cracked for the first time. Well, not with me. But the HOA has managed this area for years. Managing and owning are two different things, the younger officer said. I pulled out my phone. If it's all right, I'd like to get my attorney on the line. She should be involved at this point. Karen's face drained of color. An attorney? Isn't that a little much? We're just neighbors, after all. But it was too late for neighborly pleasantries. The game had changed. I had my real estate attorney on speakerphone. Sarah Chun. Razor sharp, no nonsense, and infamous for dismantling property disputes. Didn't waste a second. Officers, this is Sarah Chun of Chun and Associates, she said coolly. I'm reviewing the county records as we speak. My client, Mr. Davidson, is the sole legal owner of parcel 247B. Any construction on that land without his written consent constitutes criminal trespass and property damage. Karen sputtered, That's ridiculous. But her voice lacked the bite it had just minutes ago. Sarah didn't even acknowledge her. I'm preparing an emergency cease and desist and filing for an immediate injunction. I strongly advise that all construction cease immediately to avoid escalating liability. Officer Martinez turned to the construction foreman. Sir, I'm going to need you to stop all work until this is sorted out. The foreman let out a breath of relief. Gladly. I want no part of a lawsuit. Karen's complexion cycled through various shades of red. You can't just shut down a community improvement project over one person's accusations. They're not accusations, ma'am, Officer Martinez said calmly. They're legal records. I suggest you get in touch with your HOA's attorney. The next 72 hours were chaos. Sarah filed the emergency injunction and got it granted almost immediately. A county surveyor confirmed what everyone except Karen already knew. The HOA's new driveway had been built a full 23 feet onto my property. The emergency HOA meeting that followed was packed wall to wall. Word had spread like wildfire, and neighbors who had previously supported Karen were now furious. How did you not verify the property lines? Robert from Maple Court demanded. What's this going to cost us? Patricia from Oak Street asked, clearly distressed. Karen sat stiffly in her president's seat, but her trademark dominance had faded. This is just a misunderstanding. Mr. Davidson is blowing way out of proportion, she said weakly. Sarah stood, commanding the room with her presence. Let me be very clear. The HOA has committed criminal trespass, property damage, and possibly fraud. Mr. Davidson is legally entitled to restoration of his land, compensation for the damage, and punitive damages for the willful nature of this violation. How much are we talking about? Someone called out from the crowd. The driveway alone cost around $40,000. Sarah responded. Removal and proper restoration will likely double that. Add in the destroyed trees, legal costs, and punitive damages, and we're looking at a minimum of $200,000. The room exploded. People called for Karen's resignation. Others were shouting, demanding to know how this project got approved without a proper survey. Karen slammed her gavel, trying to regain control. Order. I want order. A board member who'd remained quiet during my first interaction finally spoke. Karen, I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in your leadership. Seconded. Someone echoed. The vote was swift and unanimous. save for Karen's loan descent. Just like that, she was stripped of her title and position. She sat frozen, eyes vacant. And that was only the beginning of her personal unraveling. Word of the lawsuit reached her employer. She was a real estate agent, which made her mistake particularly egregious. Her broker suspended her pending an investigation by the State Real Estate Commission. The HOA's insurance company refused to cover the damages, citing gross negligence. Individual board members were suddenly facing personal liability. Karen, who had signed off on the plans, bore the largest share. At the settlement meeting, her lawyer offered terms. Full restoration of my land, $150,000 in damages, and all legal fees paid. In return, I dropped the criminal charges. My client also agrees to perform 200 hours of community service, specifically focused on property rights education. Her attorney added, in a tone that made it clear this wasn't up for debate. Karen hadn't said a word. Her face was pale. Her earlier bravado was nowhere to be found. When it came time to sign the agreement, her hand trembled. One last thing, Sarah said. Mr. Davidson requires a written apology. It will be read aloud at the next HOA meeting and published in the community newsletter. That broke her. Karen's face crumpled as she realized the depth of her humiliation. The woman who had ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist was now being forced to admit wrongdoing to the very people she'd bullied. 3 months later, the restoration was complete. The illegal driveway had been demolished, the land regraded, and new trees planted. As I surveyed the now peaceful property, I noticed one of the older oaks, damaged during the construction, wasn't surviving. The tree service confirmed it was too far gone. While cutting it down, the chainsaw hit something solid. With a loud metallic clang, something buried in the trunk was revealed. An old metal sign, swallowed by decades of bark. We gently pried it out and brushed off the dirt. The faded letters were still visible. Private property. Keep out. Asterisk asterisk. I stood there for a long moment, holding the rusted sign, struck by the bitter irony. The warning had always been there, literally rooted in the earth Karen had so arrogantly ignored. Some people, I realized, are so drunk on authority they don't notice the signs, no matter how old, how obvious, or how deeply embedded they are. Karen's final appearance as president was a far cry from the power she once wielded. She stood before a packed room, voice flat and expression empty, reading the court-mandated apology. Her real estate license had been suspended for 2 years. She owed a personal judgment of $75,000. As she finished reading, she looked up at the crowd that used to fear her, and a single tear rolled down her cheek.